Hi everyone, my name's Liv and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a chocolate cream pudding. So I'm actually very excited to show you how to make this because it is actually a homemade recipe that my mom has been making as long as I can remember. At every holiday, we always have her chocolate cream pie that has her homemade chocolate pudding recipe incorporated into it. And I just recently learned how to make it myself. So I'm really excited to show you guys how to make that today. So first we're gonna start off with our mise en place. So I have all of my ingredients laid out here. We're going to need for our recipe 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, half teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 cup of sugar, 2 cups of milk, 1 teaspoon vanilla, 2 tablespoons of butter. I like to cut mine up into smaller cubes like this so that it's easier when I add it in later. And then 4½ ounces or 3/4 of a cup of chocolate chips. So there are 2 things that I got set up ahead of time for this recipe as it'll be really helpful to you later. So the first is our 2 egg yolks that we are going to need for later on. I already cracked those, separated the yolk from the white, and I beat them a little bit with a fork. So I'm gonna just have that set aside here for later. And then I have a cold water ice bath set up in the sink for the very end. So if you wanna get those set up ahead of time, it'll really help you save some time later. So first what I'm going to do is start off here with my dry ingredients. I'm going to add in my cornstarch, salt, and sugar to my saucepan. And I'm going to be using a wooden spoon today. I'm just gonna mix my dry ingredients together a little bit. Once I have that done, I'm going to turn my stovetop on and set it to medium heat. And now that we have that ready, we're going to gradually add in our milk. I tend to make a mess when I do this, so if you do, no judgment, but you just want to slowly start adding it in and just start incorporating that milk with your dry ingredients in the saucepan. You don't have to go super slow with adding the milk, but you just want to make sure that you're not dumping it in all at once. All right. Perfect. So now that I have my milk added in here, I just really want to make sure that I get into the corners of my saucepan to make sure that I don't get any clumps that form, get any of my dry ingredients that are going to burn to the saucepan, mess up the recipe in any way. So for this recipe, we're really going to start seeing the gelatinization of starch. That's pretty much the entirety of what this recipe is. So what that means is that we have, for gelatinization of starch, you need to have 3 products. You need to have a heat source, you need to have a liquid source, and you need to have your starch. So I have my cornstarch in here, and with the addition of my liquid, my milk, and our heat, we are going to notice that these starch granules are going to swell and they're going to burst. And as that process happens, these granules are going to slowly take in that liquid and we're going to see it thicken. And that's what's going to give us our pudding product. Patience is a virtue with this. This is probably going to take about 10 minutes for this whole process to really thicken. And then after that, it's pretty speedy. So while I'm taking care of this, I will check back in with you guys in just a little bit while I'm stirring. All right, hi everyone. Just checking in. We've been stirring for about 7 minutes now. I don't know if you can tell, it might be a little bit difficult to see, but we are just starting to get those cornstarch granules swelling. And so we're now starting to get more of a viscous product. So like I said, patience is a virtue. I've just been standing here, stirring in my figure 8, getting a nice pass around my edges to make sure I'm fully incorporating everything. And I was doing that for 7 minutes until this just started to thicken. But once it does, it really happens fast after this. So as you can kind of see now, it's getting a little bit thicker here for us. So we're just about ready now to start on our next step. I'm just going to keep stirring it, let it get a little bit thicker before I temper the eggs. And for those of you who may not know or remember, tempering our eggs, we don't want to just add them right into this mixture because they will curdle being added to this heat. We want to gradually warm them up a little bit. So I think this is pretty good. I'm going to turn my heat down a little bit. And you can see it's bubbling. That is perfectly normal. So I'm gonna set that there. We're gonna temper our eggs before we add them in. So I just like to take a couple of spoonfuls here, just add it in, just whisk my fork around, just to incorporate that. You don't want to go too fast because again, can curdle your eggs. Don't want that to happen. Here, let me get it where you can maybe see it a little bit better over here. The handle not in the way. You'll have to forgive me, I am a lefty. So my stirring skills with my right hand are not too great, but gets the job done. All right. Set my spoon aside. Alrighty, so now that we've added a little bit of our hot mixture in with our eggs, I'm gonna switch my spoon over here now. And now we're going to incorporate our eggs in. All right. Just got my spoon in there, make sure I get all of my egg. All right. And you notice that your egg is gonna change the color of this a little bit. It's gonna make it a little more opaque, a little more yellowish. But you wanna just fully incorporate that in there. Can turn your temperature back up to medium. And once you have that fully added in here, we're gonna add in our butter and our vanilla. So I'm gonna just add my butter right in there. Start mixing that in and I'll add my vanilla right on top. I wanna just keep on stirring that, let the butter fully melt. Now, if you wanted to, you could stop right here and you could just have a vanilla pudding. But for me personally, I love chocolate, so I'm gonna go ahead and add in my chocolate chips to this. You wanna make sure you continuously stir this, especially once it gets to this point so that you don't burn it to the bottom of the pan. That's why these next steps are just a little bit faster. Gotta work pretty quickly. All right, so now I'm adding in my chocolate chips. Gonna just stir, fully incorporate it so it gets that really nice chocolatey brown rich color. This smells so good. Make sure scrape your edges, get everything in there. Want to get as much of this as we can. Alrighty, so now that I have this stirred up, I'm gonna turn off my heat and I'm gonna transfer this over and I'll meet you guys at the ice sink. Alrighty, hi guys. So now that we finished cooking our pudding on the stove, we have now moved it to our ice bath that we had set up ahead of time. So I just have this filled with about 3 inches of really cold water, just threw in some ice cubes to make sure that it was going to stay cool while we were over working on the stove. And now I just put my saucepan right in here. We're gonna let this sit for about 30 minutes just to let it fully cool. This part is not as tedious as the other part was where you needed to continuously stir your product. You just want to give this a good stir once every couple of minutes. I want to say like once every 5 minutes. Just want to make sure it doesn't burn to the bottom of the pan. Make sure that it doesn't get a film over top of it, that it just stays nice, viscous, thick, creamy. So while this is cooling, I am going to wash my dishes and I will check back in with you guys. Alrighty guys, welcome back. So it's been 30 minutes. Our pudding has fully cooled now at this point, so it is ready to eat. One thing to note though, if you are not going to eat the pudding right away, be sure to put it in the fridge immediately, just so that way you can avoid any pathogens at room temperature. You want to make sure that it stays cool if you are not going to be eating it right away. And if you're going to be serving it and have it out for a period of time, make sure that you leave it in like a bucket of ice, leave it in an ice bath like how we have it in our sink earlier, something like that. So we're gonna go ahead and try it now. So if you're a lover of chocolate, this is absolutely for you. For me personally, like I said, I just learned how to make this recipe, so I'm kind of tweaking it to my preferences. This is a little too chocolatey for me. I stuck to my mom's homemade, which is like 4.5 ounces, but I personally would use a little bit less. That's what I really like about this dish, is that you have room to play around with it. If you wanted to stop at the vanilla and not add the chocolate chips, you could have a vanilla pudding. If you wanted to try different flavors like butterscotch, you could do that. Or if you wanted to try adding in like banana instead, you could do that and have a banana pudding. So I really like that this is something that you can play around with. Like I said, we usually eat it in a chocolate cream pie, but it's delicious as is. It is, though, a treat that you should be mindful of when you do eat it. It's a little bit higher in calories. It's 300 calories per half cup serving, but there's about 5 grams of protein in it. You do get a decent amount of calcium in this, as well as vitamin A and some potassium, but you just have to be mindful on what you're eating for the rest of the day if you're gonna have this. But I really like it because it's really satisfying to me to make it homemade rather than going out to the store. And it's something that you can make with a family member. If you have kids, I think this is a really great recipe for kids to have, and then you can share it with them afterwards. I don't know what kid wouldn't love chocolate pudding. Or you can make it with your significant other. As you saw there, at one point when we were adding in our eggs and we were adding the butter and the vanilla, it was one of those that it could be a 2-person team, so it's definitely something that you can do with somebody else. But I challenge you guys to try this at home. Let me know how you like it. Let me know if you tweak anything to your personal preferences. Thanks for joining in today, guys.